In December of 2015, Scott Weiland would pass away at the young age of 48, and his death would shock the rock world. At the time of his death, he had formed a new group called Scott Weiland and the Wildabouts and was touring with the band and even put out a record. And in April of 2015, footage emerged online of Scott Weiland playing with his band in Texas, and Scott really seemed out of it, as it can be seen in this clip.
Right, this is a new song. We just worked it out today.
Now, Weiland's rep had to put out a statement saying he hadn't gotten much sleep, he had a faulty earpiece, and he had a few drinks. And shortly after the incident happened, Richard Patrick of the band Filter gave an interview where he commented on Weiland, saying he became privy to a number of backstage stories while working with Weiland's former Stone Temple Pilots bandmates in the band Army of Anyone, and he weighed in on the subject during a recent interview in which he argued, "We all want Scott to be Scott, but Scott's not even really Scott. I love him, but he's transformed into a very different person. Bless his heart, and I hope he gets sober and everything, but I was in Army of Anyone for years with the Stone Temple Pilots DeLeo brothers, and working on that record and producing it, I heard a lot of stuff about what it was like being in a band with Scott, and when someone shows up an hour and a half late to a show in New Jersey and makes an audience wait, all these people want to go home." Patrick would add, "It's sad that 3 guys have to sit around and wait for somebody to show up to rehearsal, and they've been there for 2 weeks working and the singer hasn't even shown up. And you get on stage and the guy doesn't even know how to sing his own songs, and it's pathetic and it's sad for everybody." Patrick would go on to claim that fans would be enabling Weiland's behavior, stating, "The fans are just sticking up for Scott and they have no idea of what is going on behind the scenes, and it's actually, they're just pushing him into his death because they're making him believe that whatever I did is acceptable and I can be as high as I want and I can do as much drugs as I want." And the vocalist would go on to say, "Some STP fans say he's a badass rock and roll star. You can't have STP without Scott Weiland. Okay, well, you're going to get what you want. He'll be a rock star legend that died in a hotel room with a needle sticking out of his arm, and it will not be a cool thing, and it will just be sad, and his kids will be traumatized." And it's bizarre that the biggest enabler for Scott is the audience. At least a couple of years ago, I don't know what it's like now. And Weiland would respond to these comments with a statement he'd released through Blabbermouth that read, "Hey Richard, thanks for your thoughts and opinions on my life, and just so you know, and others do as well, I haven't had a needle in my arm in 13 years. Overcoming my addiction was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I'm damn proud of the fact that the time in my life when drugs were stronger than my commitment to my health is so far behind me, and always will be. By the way, man, I recall when I did do drugs and you were one of the guys getting high with me. It's behind you. Please note and respect that it's behind me too. As for my issues with my former band, just remember the old adage that there's 2 sides to every story. I haven't been late for a show in a very long time, and I have worked really hard to be present and on time for my fans. I'm not perfect, no one is, but I have worked my butt off to repair the reputation I created for being thoughtless years ago. Why you felt the need to attack me is unclear, but I'm happy to set the record straight. Best regards to you." In March of 2015, Weiland was back with a new studio album named Blaster, and a band that he loved called the Wildabouts. But the band was hit by tragedy early on when guitarist Jeremy Brown, whom Weiland considered one of his best friends, failed to show up for a rehearsal. The 34-year-old had died at his home in Venice, California, caused by what the Los Angeles coroner would later determine involved accidental multiple drug intoxication. It was during this time that Weiland was experiencing episodes of paranoia caused by his bipolar disorder. Following a March show at Boston's Brighton Music Hall, Weiland hosted a disastrous VIP meet and greet session, heckling fans and insulting others who had paid $150 for the interaction. Weiland would later apologize publicly on Facebook. Jamie Weiland, who was Scott Weiland's third wife, had talked a bit about Scott's bipolar episodes before, saying he would be on the couch with a drink, smoking and watching whatever mindless television for weeks. I started to see he had paranoia, and some of the bipolar stuff started to come out. He kept his curtains closed all the time, and at one point, it was so bad I had to move out because he was so unstable. and they found one medication that worked, but Weiland would gain 40 pounds, so he stopped taking it. And eventually they found a medication that leveled him out. And for the last couple of years, he was doing pretty great. Now, 2015 would continue to be a sad year for Weiland as his biological father, Kent Klein, who was 72, called him on Father's Day to say he had prostate cancer. And soon Weiland would learn that his mother, Sharon, who was 71, with whom he was very close with, had cancer as well. And this was especially terrible for him since he had lost his brother Michael in 2007 due to a heart condition. Nick Mabry, who would replace Brown in the Wildabouts, would recall he was sad about his mom. At a tour stop in San Diego, Weiland would break down crying on the street before a sound check, with Mabry remembering we were just holding him like, "It's all right, brother." Also adding to Weiland's headspace was that Weiland was estranged from his own children, Noah, who was 15, and Lucy, who was 13, who lived with their mother, which was Weiland's second wife and former model Mary Forsberg, and a court had granted her full custody of them, and Weiland was also missing his kids. You guys are probably wondering, if Weiland had all this stress in his life, then why was he on the road touring? Well, Scott needed the income, which was another major source of anxiety. With a Grammy-winning catalog that spanned more than 2 decades, he had sold about 16.2 million albums in the United States, at least according to Nielsen Music. But many trips to rehab, child support payments, substance abuse, and 2 divorces had left the entertainer in serious financial trouble. Clip. And it also didn't help that Weiland was not physically healthy. In addition to 6 prescription drugs he took regularly, he was drinking as well, which concerned his wife. Weiland had also contracted hepatitis C, which was likely acquired from years of intravenous drug use, with his wife remembering his body had suffered an enormous amount of abuse, and that's no secret. And Weiland's slide into his old lifestyle really appeared to have started in 2007 during the later years in Velvet Revolver. That same year, his brother Michael had died from a cardiomyopathy, which was a disease of the heart muscle that often stems from drug use. And when Weiland got the call, the first thing he did was hit the bottle. And before long, he was doing drugs. His sister-in-law would remember that the loss of his brother was a huge blow, and Weiland probably never recovered from that loss. Now, Weiland himself never thought his drinking was a problem, but in the spring of 2015, the newest Wildabout, guitarist and recent teetotaler Mayberry, had worried about his bandmates drinking. He tried to talk with Weiland, but that was useless, so he took refuge in Al-Anon, which is a recovery program for family and friends of alcoholics. Remembering, it's a heavy thing, and I realized it wasn't going to make a difference. That's how he was. On past tours, Weiland brought along a sobriety coach for support, but he hadn't used one in years. And on the road, Weiland and his bassist Tommy Black were drinking buddies. The two had been out late Wednesday on December 2nd, 2015 in Chicago, where the Wildabouts bus stopped after a show in Toronto. The next morning, according to a crew member on the bus, Weiland woke up at 9, used the bathroom, and then returned to bed. Sometime later, after they arrived in Bloomington, Minnesota, Black knocked on the singer's door to invite him to breakfast, but Weiland didn't answer. And this wasn't unusual. Weiland was known for sleeping late. And that was one custom everybody observed. If Scott's asleep, then we leave him alone. So when the band and crew headed out to the Mall of America to shop for Christmas presents, they left him behind like always. And in Los Angeles that same day, his wife Jamie woke up with a text that read, "I'm so in love with my beautiful wife," and she called and texted Weiland's phone but got no response. And it wasn't like him not to get back to her, especially on a day off. With her remembering, "I just started getting this weird agitated feeling," and at 7 p.m. in Minnesota, she called Aaron Moeller, who was the band's tour manager and a former Marine, who promised to rouse the singer. And around 8 p.m., Moeller entered the bus, which was parked behind a Marriott Courtyard Inn, and Weiland was lying on his left side in a fetal position. His hands were by his head and his eyes were half closed. I shook his leg and thought, "Oh my God, he's not moving." I went to his shoulders and realized he was stiff. And Moeller recalled drummer Joey Castillo, who sprinted from the lobby. He looked for a pulse along Weiland's neck but couldn't find one. And meanwhile, Moeller dialed 911, remembering, "I think he's dead." He said to the dispatcher, "He's not breathing." Now, Jamie still hadn't heard anything, so she kept redialing Moeller's cell, which went straight to voicemail. Then a crew member called her to break the terrible news. "Honey, he's dead. He's not coming back." And I just fell to the floor, Jamie remembered. The last time Jamie Weiland saw her husband Scott alive, the couple spent a romantic Thanksgiving Day dining at an Italian restaurant in New York. The night before, on November 25th, 2015, the former Stone Temple Pilots and Velvet Revolver frontman headlined the nearby Gramercy Theater with his backing band, the Wildabouts. Even though the couple was having a great dinner together, she did remember, "I think maybe I knew I was never going to see him again. We couldn't get enough of each other and it was very powerful." And 1 week after that dinner together, Scott Weiland would be found dead on his tour bus from a toxic mix of drugs, and his death was ruled accidental. He would only be 48 years old. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching.